Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. This is another Arsenal news aftermath after a game show. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Get into the chat and let me know how you guys are feeling. I always know it's going to be an insane show when there's already comments in the comment section, like in the chat before it even starts. So I'm sure this is going to be a tasty show, but like I said, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, let me know how you guys are feeling, and we're going to go ahead and go through the nitty-gritty. I think we have tons to talk about. Saka's injury, Ben White's new deal, the Kai Havertz discourse rages on, which I said it will continue to rage on and continue to be a bone of contention until he starts playing like a player that's decent. It's, why are Arsenal looking toothless? I think there's been some confusion or maybe some criticism around Arsenal's midfield and why is it not clicking? Why are we not creating chances? All that kind of stuff. So, my dog is losing her whole mind. Can you stop? But tons to talk about. So again, make sure you guys are in the comment section and letting me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. Let's see. Graham says maybe everyone needs to realize that injuries happen all the time. It's a part and parcel of a footballer's life. Blaming Mikel Arteta for a random event that was bound to happen sooner rather than later is ridiculous. Simon Oliver says, from what I've seen of Raya, looks worse than good old Rambo. He's part of us and pumps us up. Didn't Raya do a replica of that Ramsdale pass to Tommy versus City last season? Put the squad back in. The funny thing about that is that you pulled on, an example of Ramsdale also making a mistake that was quite similar. And so basically, you can't really say that Ramsdale is better. The only thing you could probably say is Ray is not that much better if that's how you feel. But the stats really do back it up. In the almost the same amount of games, Raya statistically is still better than Ramsdale. So I think I've already alluded to the fact that I feel like, Ramsdale is another Tierney where people are emotionally attached to the player so much so that they're unwilling to accept that the player is not good enough or, needs to be upgraded upon. And the player that comes in, if they make any sort of mistake, it's, oh, well, I told you Ramsdale is better. Oh, I told you Tierney was better. No, Raya having a bad game still does not account for the I don't know how you can ignore the last year and a half of Aaron Ramsdale and watch Raya for a couple of games and then say, Ramsdale is better. There's been too many mistakes, unforced errors, goals going in the back of the net that should be saved for me, where I'm actually just looking forward to Raya settling down in the team and being the better goalkeeper, because statistically, Raya has been the fourth best goalkeeper in the league, and Ramsdale has consistently been mid-bottom of the league in terms of being like a goalkeeper, and he played in a much better side than Brentford. So, yeah, he's just another Tierney for me. Like it sounds harsh, but I love Ramsdale, but he's another Tierney where it's glaringly obvious that this player needs to be upgraded upon, not good enough, whatever. But because we love them so much, we don't want to believe it. And so whoever comes in, as soon as they make a mistake, like Zenchenko against Liverpool, it's, well, why is Tierney not playing? It's the same thing. Sorry. If both make the same mistake, then neither one is better than the other, but statistically he is better. Let's see what you guys are saying. We're gonna get into all of this shit. Andy says, Graham, oh no, I don't like that comment. John says, judging Raya now is silly. I agree, especially when, again, like I showed you guys the statistics before this game, so it's not going to change that much from last game to this game. 4 games versus 5 games from Ramsdale to Raya, it is night and fucking day between the two of them. So I'm sorry, just because he made a mistake and it was his mistake, Raya mistake, but can you say definitively with your entire chest that you think that that game would have been any different if Ramsdale had been there? Probably not. Artie says, we don't need a backup for Saka. Jesus can still play on the right wing, especially if Arsenal are going for a center forward in January. Mark says, Raya needs a good game on Sunday, settle down in the lineup. I also think both of Raya's poor games came in matches where Arsenal were poor as a team. Arsenal were really bad against Spurs as a team, and he also had a poor game. And then Arsenal were really poor as a team against Lens, and he was also poor on the day. You know, I don't know how else to really put it. Like, I want to see Raya a little bit more before we go into this, because for me, whether Raya is the guy or not, Ramsdale's not good enough for me. I'm just going to put my flag in the sand right there in terms of a goalkeeper that's going to take us to the next level and win us titles. For me, Ramsdale is not it. So even if Raya is not the answer, Ramsdale is also not the answer. So I want to see whether or not I'm actually in the stage of, is Raya the person? I'm beyond the idea that Ramsdale is the guy for us, because I've watched a year and some change of him chucking the ball into his own net, not getting to his near post, flapping at crosses, not commanding his box, you know, being shaky in possession, letting the emotions overtake him, not calming down his back line. Like, so for me, I'm beyond, you know, Ramsdale versus Raya. I'm kind of like, is Raya the guy that's going to help us win titles? I'm beyond it now at this point. So yeah, but I just want to ask you guys to lift the mood, you know, just to lift the mood. Would you guys, you know, be up for?
To rap anyone, lift the mood a bit?
No, we don't.
Because we need to lift the mood a little bit. We need to lift the mood a little bit, you guys. Like, as disappointed as I am about the game yesterday, you know, here's the thing. I think that there's tons to talk about, and you guys know I like to talk about what is everybody talking about on socials, and that's going to be the main meat of the show. Is I'm going to pull up tweets from the last day or so that have come off of the aftermath of this loss, and we're going to discuss the main topics, and you guys are going to let me know if you agree with it or not. But ultimately, like, I just want to set the tone that, like, these conversations, we're having them, but like, we have only lost one game. We deserve to lose that game, but like, some of it is just a little bit too far. I feel like there's, you know, it's not the end of the world. And I guess, like, from my perspective is, coming into the season, I'm finding it a little bit more difficult to get so emotionally invested in these games, like one by one by one, because of how stressful the run-in was last season. It was every single game was so stressful and so, like, filled with like emotion and like up and down roller coaster. And so this season, we're not even like, we're just about 10 games in, not even 10 games in the Premier League. And I'm finding it difficult to like really get like locked into like the run-in feeling, you know, because it does feel like some Arsenal fans have not quite let go of the run-in, and they started the season with the same emotional like response to everything that they did in the run-in. It's too early in the damn season. I'm seeing people talk about Manchester City and, oh my gosh, it's the game of the season. It's our biggest game. It's our this, it's our that. You know, Manchester City just look at this game like any other game. They're not looking at this game against us in the weekend as the biggest game of their season. Why is it always the biggest game of our season, whether we're in a title race or not? Manchester City is our biggest game, and it's the one that's going to decide whether or not we're a good enough team, and whether or not we're an elite side, and whether or not blah blah blah. It's just another game. It's just another game, and the constant, like, every single game is the one that's going to tell us about who we are, and it's the biggest game of our season, and we need to. Too much emotion, too early. We're not in the run-in. We're nowhere near it. It's too early in the season, too many twists and turns. And quite frankly, like, I'm just finding it a little bit too, like, we're too like locked into run-in mode as a fan base. You know, the emotions, I feel like it takes a toll on the players, to be honest. I feel like they have not fully like put the last season behind them. There is a timidness and a stiffness to the team that I feel like is way too, like, it's too early to be this nervous about shit. But here we are, 10 games in, and we are in absolute turmoil after losing one game, and as a fan base. And everybody else has lost a game. Everybody else has lost a game. Every other big team has lost. But Arsenal lose their first game, and it's like, it's just, it's too fucking much. So I'm setting the tone now that I love having discussions, but it's not coming, for me, it's not going to come from a place of like, we're the worst team in the world and this is the end. And lift the mood. One loss. We can, like, it's twists and turns, too early. Okay. And Champions League was never going to be easy, you guys. It was never going to be easy. I am so sorry, but there were just way too many people saying, oh my God, why do we have such a strong lineup against Lens? Oh my gosh, like we should be looking towards the weekend. Because we're not good enough to just look towards the weekend. We're not. Do you see how strong Manchester City are going in the Champions League against bums? Do you see it? Do you see it? Everybody's putting out strong lineups. Why? Because the Champions League is no joke. We haven't even qualified for this competition for like 6 years in a row. But now people want to get into the competition and fully fucking rotate. Am I hearing that correctly? Y'all want to fully rotate against, like, we were never about to walk up into France and just walk over Lens. Ever. Okay? So it was always going to be a hard game. Always. And we rightfully were bopped. Okay? They were much better than us on the day. And they deserved it. And we deserved to hold that L. But, this team is also going to have to learn how to be in multiple competitions that you're expected to do well in. And, they're learning. They had to play midweek and then turn around and play against a rested and, vivacious Spurs. Then they had to turn around and, play against Brentford, a very strong Brentford away from home with a rotated side. Then they had to play against Bournemouth. And then they had to turn around and go to France after being delayed at the airport for 5 hours. Like, that is just where we are. An elite team is going to get over this shit and learn from their mistakes quickly. And so we'll learn sooner rather than later whether or not Arsenal have learned these early lessons that are coming to them. But, it's just kind of like we lost. It's just, I'm having a hard time like connecting to this. Oh my gosh, it's the end. Yo-Yo is saying it's because people aren't truly convinced and confident in this manager and squad. The insecurity is palpable amongst Gooners. Olu says, but here, let me go back to this as well. But it's also because people lie constantly. We try to put on this brave face all the time of like, we're all together and we're all behind this. And then as soon as we have one loss, everybody starts airing their true feelings. And then, somebody like me who always speaks my truth sits back and watches people double down or back flip flop or whatever, because they weren't really telling the truth from the beginning. We are not set in stone. Like we have proven nothing yet as a team, as a club, as a manager, anything. We are very much so in the is he the guy or not mode. We're there. Like people that were acting like, we had proven something last season. We didn't prove anything, but we're a decent side that plays good football with some good players, but we haven't won anything. And so it's one of those where, anytime that you mention something that's out of the line of what the consensus is of the bigger accounts online, you get absolutely slandered. But then anytime we lose a game, they start coming back and they're furious about things. And I'm like, but wait a minute. Didn't you say we were being too negative? Didn't you say that we were fine? Didn't you say? So like, yeah, if we just keep it 100 and just say how we truly feel, then after we lose a game, everybody's not going to like reveal their true selves. Like there's so many people that pretend constantly that they're happy with things that they're not. I'm not. I'm going to tell you guys exactly the truth, whether you guys think it's negative or not, or if you think it's positive, like toxic positivity or not. Olu says probably why we aren't playing with the handbrake is in some games and exercising more caution. Also, consistently playing Havertz won't work. He's not the guy. Artie says it's funny. Arsenal wins against City. It doesn't matter anything if City wins. Arsenal's season is finished. Nico says it's not because we lost. It's because we haven't been playing well this season. Lucas says Lens won 22 of their last 26 at home. We were never going into that game and just wiping them. I don't know why people were acting like we would. Prince says there's no way for Arteta to defend hiring Kai Havertz. He only has one job while the transfer window was open. His task was to enter the market and find a player who will improve us. Mr. says, to be fair, an away game in Europe is hard in most cases. I think the thing is like I can kind of accept the loss. So I'm not really that focused on the loss because we were going to lose a game sooner rather than later. Like we were not like the odds were like there for us to lose a game sooner rather than later. And we were beat by a team that played better than us. And I can accept that we were off on the day. The growing themes across the 10 games, I think are more why people are like very much so like fired up. It's not just about the loss. It's the trigger of, oh my gosh, we finally lost a game, and now we can really start talking about Havertz and Ramsdale versus Raya and Arteta overplaying Saka and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, but I was a little bit, concerned about the amount of Arsenal fans that felt like we were just going to go to France and we could rotate and just, you know, win the game without having to like it wasn't going to be a battle on our hands. That was very strange, and I can tell people don't really remember being in this competition. Covenant says, good day. We have depth, yes, but we don't have strong depth. That's why we can't rotate. We have numbers that are not good enough, just average. I disagree with this 110%. I respect your opinion, but I think once again, we're going into a season where people are letting Arteta off the hook. We do not have poor depth. We have depth that is underutilized. And, when players are playing well, they're not, not, what is it? What's the word? They're not like given more chances after they play really well. They're left on the bench cold. That is often that, you know, we look at players that are quite talented at the beginning of the season, and then midway through the season when we start to have to use our depth and we're not able to like win games or whatever, we start to say that the depth is not good enough. We came into the season, timber injury aside, feeling pretty decent about the depth that we had. Tamiyasu, Kivior, Vieira, ESR, Nelson, these players, they're not ever going to be exactly like the players that they come in for. But the idea that they are poor depth or not good enough is just an excuse for Mikel Arteta not to utilize his squad properly and get us through hard matches and rotate properly. And every single season we do this, where we start off the season and we talk about how our depth is better, and then one game in, 2 games into, especially like European campaign, they're not good enough, and that's why Arteta doesn't rotate. He doesn't rotate because he can't figure out a way to play his system with players that aren't necessarily exactly the same as the players that they're replacing. So, like the best example that I can give you is Jorginho. He bought Jorginho. He loves Jorginho. He knows Jorginho very well. But the idea that you can play Jorginho in the exact same way that you play Declan Rice is insanity. Playing Vieira off of right wing with no overlap or anything, when he's nothing like Saka, just shows his inflexibility. And so then we start saying Jorginho is not a great player when we know he's quality. We start saying Vieira is not a good player when we know that he has quality. And then that's just letting Arteta off the hook. It's up to the manager to figure out ways to solve problems when you don't have your best players available to you, but you have other players that have other strengths. You need to figure out a way to extract those strengths and not make them look worse. And that's why we're constantly talking about our depth not being good enough. It's not about the depth not being good enough. He signed Vieira. He signed Jorginho. He signed Trossard. These are great players. This is good depth that other teams would love to have. But Arteta is inflexible. And so he needs to figure out a way to use those players better. And putting them in the exact same positions and asking them to do the same things as Martinelli and Saka and Declan Rice is more about Mikel Arteta not doing a good job than them not being good depth. So I really push back on the idea that we don't have decent depth. Like, we go into every single season and then it's, oh, well, we need 2 world-class players in every single position. Guess what? Liverpool didn't need that to win the Champions League. They didn't need that to win the Premier League. They didn't need that. They had some very average guys on the bench that they had to rely upon, but like, they did it because the manager figured out ways to get the most out of the team that he has. That is the job. If we're going to say that Mikel Arteta has to have perfect settings in order to just get like bare minimum results, then he's not the right guy. That's just period, point blank, So let's go ahead and get started, because I pulled the tweets and that's going to lead us more into like the conversations and stuff like that, right? So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. But I want to start off with some good news, because we deserve good news every once in a while, right? And so I want to start off by just talking about Ben White for a second, because it kind of went under the radar yesterday, but or the day before. But Arsenal are in talks with Ben White over a new contract, despite having 3 years left on his current 120,000 pounds per week deal with the versatile defender 25, a key part of Mikel Arteta's squad. Arsenal want to secure the long-term future of defender Ben White. He's a fullback, also plays center back. We know that shit. And Arsenal have opened formal talks. Arsenal are prepared to start discussions. White still has 3 years left to run on his existing deal, but Arsenal want to conclude talks over an improved deal as quickly as possible in an effort to secure the future of a key defender. And you know, there's an emerging sense at the Emirates that the move to sign Ben White to fresh terms heading toward a successful conclusion. So we already knew that once, Odegaard was going to get his new deal, that Ben White was next. And I think he's more than deserving of a new deal. I think although he does have some flaws, which most players have flaws, you have to figure out a way to minimize them. He is a very consistent player for Arsenal. I think for the most part, he gives you a 7 out of 8 every single game. His fitness levels are very good. He's versatile. And even though some people may want a different type of right back, I think we saw yesterday that there is quite a big gap between Ben White and Tomiyasu when playing right back. So he is very important to the team for this season. And I just really like the player. I really do. I think obviously you can have, I do think Timber would have caused Ben some problems, to be honest. Like, I do think that Timber was going to come in and really disrupt the fullback positions on both sides. But that being said, I do think Ben offers the versatility and the consistency that Arsenal need, in multiple positions. And so, as we saw yesterday, we need Ben. Tomiyasu is great, but I also am feeling like Tomiyasu needs to be more of a center back than anything else. So Ben White, super important to the team. I'm happy that he's getting a new deal. Um, I get that some people want somebody else in that position or a different type of right back, but I rate Ben very, very highly. And I feel like if he played for anybody else, people would rate him a lot more. So that's just kind of, where I'm at with that. But that's some good news. Yo-Yo says, very interesting that the club keeps giving extensions. It's a safe bet to be proactive with our key players. It's good to do what Arsenal are doing, I think. I think we need to be proactive and make sure that, because at some point these are players that, maybe not Ben White, but like some players are going to be moved on in order to improve the team. And so having them on long terms is a good thing, so you can extract the most value. And also just like making sure that players that can't run their deals down and things like that. So it's, for me, it's good business. And I just really love like Ben White as a consistent performer. Like, yeah, there's probably players that you would want more. There's probably like a right back that gives you more in the attack or whatever. But I think 7 out of 8 every single game, or most games, is better than a lot of other, defenders offer. The McChronicle says Tomiyasu is naturally left-sided defender anyway. He should just play on the left or center back, I think. On the right, he's just it's like the angles don't suit him. Even yesterday, like, he just was like blindly passing it with his left foot, like weirdly at a weird angle. I'm like, Tomiyasu really needs to be on the other side, huh? Boy says Ben White is great, but we need actual fullbacks at some point. To be honest, I don't know if not having natural fullbacks is our main issue. I think if you have a full functioning midfield, um, then you don't have to rely upon your fullbacks to create for you. I think people want fullbacks that go forward and create chances because we're unsatisfied with the production of our 2 number 8s. And if you have fully functioning number 8s that create lots of chances, then you don't need fullbacks to be a part of your attack. I actually don't really care if our fullbacks are attacking or not. I actually am fully okay with us having 4 really good defenders back there and allowing our midfield to do what they're supposed to do. So I'm a little old school in that way. I was never really a big fan of the attacking fullback that's kind of more of a winger, but we kind of like are okay with them not being able to defend. Not my vibe. Don't really care about natural fullbacks. I think it's perfectly okay what we're doing now. But when your midfield is not functioning, that's when you start looking at other positions and you're like, yeah, but I want my fullback to be up there overlapping. And for me, like, I'm okay with what we have. Yo-Yo says Arteta has a penchant for center backs. We will sign more before wait, we will sign more before a so-called fullback. Like I was even looking at Timber. I think he was like the perfect prototype for what we need in that position. Like Tomiyasu is a center back. So you know, I think using him like sometimes, you know, like at fullback, it's not the best. But Timber is a right-sided center back that could play right back for Arsenal, but had the technical ability to do so. And I think, even though he could overlap, he doesn't necessarily always have to. So for me, I think Timber is like the perfect prototype for what we need. I think Ben White as well. And so for me, I'm just not really that vexed about needing this natural fullback or whatever, somebody overlapping, crossing, whatever. Um, it does. I think we have, for me, I think we have way bigger problems in midfield and up top and on the wings that if you solve those, you can kind of just shut the back door with the fullbacks that we have. For me, it's just not that deep. Our Leo is saying Arteta is trying to play Havertz to form, which is fine. If the team finished eighth last season, however, this season should have been about pushing from second. Havertz is too slow. Ivy says Ben White is very good. His only nemesis is Rashford for some strange reason. He cannot defend Rashford. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that. So yeah, Trini says Arsenal have historically been taken advantage of due to lack of size. Playing Ben as a fullback helps mitigate this. Yeah, I think there's pluses and minuses to everything. I think just saying like, okay, well, we need more attack, so we need fullbacks that can naturally attack. I think is a too simplistic way of speaking about like what we actually need. I think size, physicality, athleticism at the back is what we need, and we need our attack and midfield to function. And I don't think having overlapping fullbacks is necessarily like going to solve any of our issues. Our midfield is not functioning. That's my issue. Ben White overlapping is fine. Like I think our right side really does function quite well, even though Ben White is not a natural fullback. So that's just me. But I know some people are really wanting that. It's just not a priority for me. It's not a priority. But let's go ahead and step into the mess. So make sure you guys are again liking this video and subscribing to the channel. First things first, Arteta said, Saka's injury does not look good. And this could be Arteta bluffing. It could be Arteta bluffing, but he said he tried a back heel, a ball in the first half, and he felt something. It's something muscular, which is good. You'd rather it being muscular than like, something worse. He wasn't able to carry on. We don't know more, but it was big enough for us to remove him. And yeah, he said it doesn't look good. He's come off in the last 3 games, and he hasn't quite looked up to full fitness, just from the naked eye. And so there are a lot of conversations around whether or not, Mikel Arteta is to blame for this. A lot of people are going really, Arteta has been negligent with Saka and this is all his fault. I feel a little bit uncomfortable going that deep into things because again, like we don't know. We truly don't know. And so for me, I do think it's a conversation just because like Saka's our most important player, and I'll show you a reason why. And I think part of the reason why we don't see Saka rested, even in games like Bournemouth, which was probably the time to rest him. Like if you wanted to rest him, it wasn't against Lens in away from home in the Champions League. It was against Bournemouth away from home. And I do really push back on the idea that Lens was the place that we needed to rest Saka. But I do think it's a red flag that we can't play against Bournemouth without him. I think if you rest against Bournemouth, he's fine for Lens potentially. And so the problem that we have is Saka is so important and we actually cannot function without him. This is a tweet from Sash. I want to read this. He said, people saying Arteta should have rested Saka. Nonsense. This is a Champions League game, your second group game against a difficult team away from home. You need to play your best players and they need to be ready to do it twice a week. And I am 100% in agreement with this tweet because the idea that we're going to France and we're not going to play Saka is nonsense. And this is why these players signed extensions, why they signed new deals, why they signed for Arsenal, was to play in these games. Nobody rests their biggest players in group stages. They just don't. Like, it doesn't happen because Champions League is such fine margins, even if you think you're really good, which we're not as good as people say we are. We're a good team, but we're nowhere near like a team that could be resting their best players away from home against a team that, like somebody already said, has won 22 of their last 26 home matches or is undefeated. So I totally agree with that. The second part that came from Chitty was saying that Saka had 27 touches in 34 minutes and Havertz had 33 and 70. The problem that we have is that Saka is so important, almost to the detriment of the team. He's so important that Arteta probably doesn't feel confident without him in the side, even against somebody like Bournemouth, who we probably should have been able to go a little bit weaker against them to beat them. But we went extremely strong, which is fine. But Saka should have been off after we were up 2-0. But he stayed on until we were like 3-0 up and then had to come off with an injury. So I don't know. I feel as though the fact that Saka has 27 touches and Havertz has like 33 is an indicator of importance in the team and how we just don't function. Like, Saka is like our main key creator, our main progressor, our main antagonist, like our main player that imposes himself on the game. And that's fine because your best players, like, that's what you expect from them. But we don't have an answer without him. And that's the scary thing, because if Saka continues these having these injuries, he's going to have to sit out. And until we get to January, there is no opportunity to bring somebody into the team to play this position. We don't have anybody analogous to him in the team. So we have to figure out internal solutions that allow us to still be dangerous without Saka in the team. And that is something that I'm like, so we haven't even tried to figure out something like that. And I don't think the option is Vieira, because Vieira would need to play more like a number 10 in that position anyway. So we'd need to change the fullback or play a different right center mid that offers the overlap. So he doesn't have to be trying to take his man on, because he's not going to be able to do that. Saka is important because he's amazing, but he's almost too important, to the point where Arteta doesn't even feel comfortable resting him against Bournemouth. So I agree that he should have played against Lens, but we have a problem here, because I'm staring at the Manchester City game and I'm like, yeah, Saka probably will play because he'll be forced to play, but what is the damage going to be? And why do we not have another answer to Saka not being in the team? We need an answer, like, and a dangerous answer. We need something else. And I still feel like the system is too reliant on individuals. The system to me is not a good system if it doesn't plug and play different players in it. Right now, if it doesn't have Saka and Martinelli in it, Odegaard in it, it doesn't work. Like, it literally falls apart. That is scary times for Arsenal, I think. So, yeah, we have a problem. I think we have a little bit of a problem here. Um, it's something that I think has been in the back of a lot of people's minds on, like, okay, why is it that Arteta won't rest him ever, even against like really bad teams? I think it's because he knows that the team just, like, it, everything about what we do is about the ball going from Zinchenko to Odegaard to Saka. And I remember the season prior in 2021 where we were playing the horseshoe of death. That was very much so what we were like. It had to go from Odegaard to Saka for us to create anything. Last season, we balanced it out a little bit better because we had Xhaka over there with Martinelli, and it wasn't as bad. This season, we've definitely reverted back to Route 1. It has to go from Zinchenko to Saka to Zinchenko to Odegaard to Saka. You guys remember that 2 seasons ago, where it had to go from Partey to Odegaard to Saka? We're back there. It's a problem. It's a problem. But he is so important to the team. 27 touches in 34 minutes, but one of your main attacking midfielders has 33 in the entire game, it just shows that we are very much so reliant on one player. We are Saka FC. Adebayoga says, trust me, Saka will play on Sunday. The truth is, who else has the pace like Saka? Nelson. It's not the same. It's not the same. Boy says, Chitty has an agenda. No point in taking him seriously. The thing is like, even if he has an agenda against Havertz, the stats are there. And that's why I pulled it. It's not even about Havertz. It's about the fact that like our midfielders are actually not doing the job. Saka's doing everything, creating, progressing, creating chances, assists, goals. And so whether he has an agenda or not, you know, if that could be anybody pulling those stats and it paints the same picture. He is so reliant on Saka. Prince says, why renew Reece Nelson's contract if you don't trust him to perform in an event that a guy like Saka is injured? That your guess is as good as mine, because I just feel like Reece Nelson is a natural left winger. And so he should be playing the minutes that Martinelli can't play if Trossard is not a good option, and he can play on either side, and he's not trusted. And you can say that it's because he doesn't have his fitness all the way up, whatever. But I just think it comes down to him not being trusted, and we should not be signing players up to new deals if they're not trusted. We had an opportunity this summer to move Nelson on, to move Nketiah on, to move players like that on, and use the money to bring in a proper winger or a striker or a left center mid that just knows how to play the position, and we chose not to. And we have players in our team that need to be trusted to play minutes when some of our guys, need rest. Boss says we need speed. The team yesterday doesn't have speed. Speed is why Teta would like Mudryk. We had chances to bring in somebody with speed. We didn't do it. So I don't know why. Like, I get what you guys are saying. Like, we do need more direct, more speed, more directness, because without Martinelli and Saka, we just lose it all. But they had 200,000 pounds to spend this summer, and they didn't even think to bring in somebody that would offer something different in regards to like speed, or they actually bought probably like the most opposite type of player that you could, in that respect. So there it is. Yo-Yo says, I called it last season. The difference between Arsenal and City star boys reflect the quality of managers and stature of clubs. Foden was incubated and Saka has been our bedrock. You can't really deny that, Nikki says, it's not that he was played against Bournemouth, it's the fact that he stayed on the pitch at 3-0 carrying Knox and with CL away and City up next. Same thing. I mentioned that as well, that he probably should have been taken off earlier. But I think just in general, the fact that Arteta doesn't feel confident going away to Bournemouth with that, like, we could have went a little bit. The fact that we went so strong, I think, shows that Mikel Arteta doesn't feel confident in the squad yet. And that's, to me, like, I'm not saying we should have rotated everybody, but we went hella strong against Bournemouth. Hella strong, knowing that we were going to have to go strong against Lens and that Man City was on the horizon. That's weird to me. O'Malley says, don't want to hear any Odegaard KDB comparisons until I see him step up in games like yesterday. Odegaard definitely a focus. I have nothing to really say about that. Nico says, what's this agenda nonsense? We can clearly see that Havertz isn't good enough. I don't know. I think people just want it to work so badly that they get kind of like upset of anybody just saying like they don't see it. And I think like, I don't know. I think you got to give people some leeway here. We spent 70 million on a player that we didn't have to bring in. So even though people are really trying to back it, I think you have to respect the fact that like until Havertz steps up and actually plays like a decent player, people are going to continue to talk about it. And so continuously trying to like stop the conversation is not going to work. I would start focusing on Havertz not performing and why we bought him and less about the fans reacting to it, because it's not the fans' fault that they're watching a player play in a position that he does not suit. And it's painful. Nikki says Teta wanted to sign Rafinha for a reason. Strange that he didn't go for another right winger last window. I don't think they saw the player that they wanted. And we did reach out, to see about Neto this past summer. and were rebuffed, so, Neto, is not going to leave Wolves anytime soon. So they wanted to, they wanted to bring somebody in, but they want the perfect player. And I think they should go for somebody that really, can play both sides and offers that directness and, the speed and all that kind of stuff. But it's a glaring issue. And now we have to rely upon like Vieira and Trossard, who I think are really good players, but probably suit a more interior role. And our wingers tend to be quite isolated. So unless Arteta is going to change his tactics to offer more overlaps and more support for players that aren't necessarily like touchline wingers or natural wingers, then it's not going to work. He needs to figure something out or play Nelson and trust him. So yeah, but I agree that Saka should have played against Lens, but you know, maybe not so much against Bournemouth. And I'm more concerned about the fact that it doesn't feel like Arteta trusts anybody outside of Saka. He's too reliant on him. Um, Moving on to a conversation around the Raya and Ramsdale situation. Um, this is an interesting tweet from Sean. Sean is saying if Raya starts ahead of Ramsdale for the City game, then it's clear Arteta doesn't make decisions on merit because neither Raya's passing or shot stopping has been anywhere near as good as Ramsdale's, let's be honest. Arteta has given himself an unnecessary problem, in my opinion. Now, Raya did not have a good game against Lens or Spurs. He didn't. Period. But the idea that like we haven't seen better passing from Raya in the 4 games where he had like clean sheets. Um, Raya played against Everton, he played against PSV, he played against Spurs, he played against Bournemouth, and he played so each player I think has played 5 games. So it's 5 and 5. It's 5 and 5. The idea that you haven't seen anything from Raya that has been superior to Ramsdale for me just speaks agenda, and I love Ramsdale, and I'm unwilling to see that he's probably not good enough. Yeah, Raya has made mistakes, but there's no indication that like we would not have conceded those same goals with Ramsdale because Ramsdale has made those same mistakes. And so I don't know if I think that this is vindication for Ramsdale. There are a lot of people calling for Ramsdale to play against Manchester City, but Ramsdale has not played in a game against Manchester City and won it or done anything of note that would make me remove Raya from that position. Um, like I said at the top of the show, I don't think Ramsdale is going to take us to the next level. So I'm more interested in seeing if Raya can. And 2 poor games when everybody it was poor as a team for me doesn't really shake up to like Ramsdale should be starting and like Arteta made a mistake. I watched the last season and a half of Ramsdale feeling as though I'm watching a goalkeeper that is not commanding his box, is letting easy goals in, and is, not really able to offer what we need on the ball. So it's interesting that people feel like yesterday was vindication for Ramsdale and they want him between the sticks against City. Personally, I would stick with Raya still. Because in the games where Raya was good, he was much better than Ramsdale at commanding his box, not giving up easy fucking goals, and passing out of the back with some sort of confidence. So it's up to Arteta what he wants to do. But this meritocracy thing as well, like, have we not been around football long enough to understand that football a lot of sometimes can be about meritocracy, but every single manager has favorites that they trust and that they don't. And they have players that they will always rely upon and players that they won't. And so Arteta going, when we have other positions to address, like winger, striker, and making a point to buy a goalkeeper tells you all you need to know about how he feels about Ramsdale. How defensive he is in press conferences when Ramsdale is brought up, for me, is enough of an indication that he just doesn't like him and the goalkeeper coach don't rate Ramsdale that much. They felt like it was such a glaring issue that they had to go out there and loan somebody else in. And Raya, for me, is the starter. Like, do you really think Ramsdale is coming back in against Manchester City? Like, he is the cup keeper now. So not really understanding this whole like fake meritocracy thing. Arteta can like, why are we still listening to Arteta in press conferences, by the way? Like he's saying it's a battle for the number one position. It ain't. Like it's not. Like Raya is the goalkeeper that they want. And there's a clear reason why. And the stats between 5 games and 5 games are glaringly obvious that one keeper, despite the mistake that he made against Lens, is better than Ramsdale. So I still don't really understand this like thing, not to mention that Raya was the top 4 goalkeeper in the league at Brentford. And Ramsdale was flagging somewhere down towards the bottom middle. So people can yell at me all day about Ramsdale, like he's our guy, like his energy and the way that he backs to wall, and he's does this and does that, and he saved this goal and he saved that goal. I'm not when Ramsdale is in goal, I'm not looking at somebody that's going to help us win a title. So I've placed I'm actually okay with playing this out and having potential egg on my face if Raya doesn't work out, because I feel that strongly that Ramsdale is not the guy based on what we've seen. So, he's just another Tierney for me. Somebody that we are incredibly attached to emotionally because of how, we did, like, the player that they replaced was definitely not the answer. And they took us up a little bit, and we love them because they work hard and, they say the right things and they're like funny or, whatever, Tesco bag, whatever, funny, whatever. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, Zenchenko was better than Tierney, and Tierney needed to be moved on. And Raya is better than Ramsdale. And over the course of the season, I'm sure that will become incredibly clear to people that don't want to accept it. Ramsdale is a good, talented goalkeeper, but Raya is better than him. And none of the results would have been different had he had been in the goal. Sorry. I'm willing to really put my sorry. I'm really to put my flag in the sand on this one. Like, he's just another Tierney. People are emotionally invested into Ramsdale, and so they're trying to grapple at anything as if we didn't watch the run in last season. That was enough for me. Mark says Ramsdale, Tommy was brought in to get us to Tommy was bought to get us to the level back in top 4 mix. There was not bought to challenge City. Big difference. Yo-Yo says signing Raya was admittance that the club shouldn't have signed Rams or failed to adequately develop him. Let's see. Boy says, had we kept Willock, we wouldn't have had to sign Havertz, by the way. Willock wasn't good enough. So I don't know who needs to hear that, but no matter how you spin it, no matter who we bought, whether it was Vieira or Sambi or whatever, Willock was not good enough. So the problem is Arsenal have not adequately recruited in that position. So now we're going back in time trying to make Willock good enough. Willock was always needed to be moved on. 25 million for him was perfect business. We actually brought in Odegaard right after that, or like Odegaard became a permanent signing after we moved Willock on. So I don't give a shit like right now about like Willock. Willock was not good enough. So period. Like that's the end of that. So we should have bought somebody else instead of Havertz, but Willock was not the answer. Sambi's not the answer, so I don't really understand why Willock is still being brought up. Like Willock had a little hot streak. Like I'm gonna keep it 100% with y'all. Willock will not be at Newcastle within the next 3-4 seasons. He won't. They will replace him because they have the money. So Willock is not good enough for Arsenal, and he at some point won't be good enough for Newcastle. So even his little hot streak doesn't matter. Like I get so tired of people bringing up people that were never good enough anyway, like Guendouzi, like Aubameyang, like these guys that we knew we needed to move on from. And then because we haven't recruited properly, and that's actually the main issue, acting like they were the Lord and Savior, like Willock wasn't saving us from nothing. Yo-Yo says, our back line walk on a tightrope. The goalkeeper must safely be a safety net. Rams is erratic, especially despite his quality. HICM says Raya has made 2 significant mistakes in 3 games. If you think well, here's the thing. If you count the one against Spurs where he batted it into the area, whatever, as a significant mistake, how many mistakes have Ramsdale made? So going back to Ramsdale, who's made just as many, if not more, of those mistakes, but also does not pass the ball out properly, but also does not command his box, but also doesn't calm down his back line. Ramsdale is still not the answer. So if you don't think Raya is the answer, that is a completely different conversation, because Ramsdale, we already know, is not the answer. So it's just like Willock. Havertz is not the answer, but that didn't make Willock the answer. Does that make sense? So you guys can hate Raya all you want, but that doesn't mean that we need Ramsdale between the sticks. He has made just as many, if not more, of those mistakes under zero pressure. Ramsdale. He should have saved that first goal from Fulham. He should have. He should have saved the one that they scored, the second goal. Like, every goal, every shot was flying into the back of the net when Ramsdale was in our goal. And as much as you guys don't want to you don't want to accept it, the stats don't lie. Even with the big mistake that Raya made yesterday, he is still better than Ramsdale. Passing accuracy, the amount of passes he does, his high claims, the saves, everything. So it does not make a difference. Even if you don't think Raya is good enough, Ramsdale is definitely not good enough, because Raya is better than Ramsdale. You guys just love Ramsdale. He's a nice guy. That's it. He's not an elite goalkeeper. Like, period, boo. So yeah, Mr. J says the transfer policy at Arsenal is all over the place. Cedric, Mari, Tomiyasu, Ramsdale, Havertz is just proof of this. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just one of those where I'm saying, like, I will always say that, like, making a bad recruitment decision does not mean that moving players on that we had to move on, or moving beyond those players, was not the right decision. So what we should actually be upset by is, if Raya ends up not being good enough, why did we buy Raya? Not why didn't we stick with Ramsdale? Why didn't we stick with Willock? Like, those types of things just sound wild to me. So yeah, Keenan says Raya is a better keeper than Ramsdale. Don't like the way Ramsdale lost his spot, but that's football. And that is football. It's everybody's emotionally attached to the players that we have now. So I get it's going to seem harsh the way that, the club has done things. And I do think that, like, harsh, the way that Arteta is harsh is not equal across the board. Like, some players can be bad game on game on game and still play and start every single match, where other players have a bad half and are hooked. So I understand that, like, there's no, like, I think that's my thing, is like, I'm okay with the club being ruthless, but I feel like the ruthlessness needs to be across, like, the same, but it's not, because, going back to my original point, managers have favorites. And so what you have to hope is that the favorites for a manager align with, like, the better players in the team. And I think with Arteta, some of his favorites are not necessarily the better players. That ends up being an issue. But Ray is the better goalkeeper, and the faster we accept that, the better. It's just, there's I don't really understand how what our goalkeeper was one of the worst last season. Like, he came bottom, middle bottom in almost every single metric that matters for a goalkeeper. So it's wild to me. Lamine says, we've had some bad keepers during the years, but Ramsdale is not all that. He's good, but PR aside, he's not all that. I'd rather accept mistakes from Raya than Ramsdale. Mark Neighbor says, you are not always going to get perfect transfer policy. Players come and go. Pep went through 3 or 4 goalkeepers until he got it right. Not everything clicks straight away. Philip says, good point, Jess, but all this individual talk is not the problem. Since Barcelona final, we have gone backwards. Our European performances in the last 5 to 7 years have been embarrassing. We will be talking about that. The European record is not great. We're getting to it. It's not all about the individuals, but I found this tweet very interesting, because I just cannot understand how anybody could have watched Ramsdale and thought that he was the guy. Like, we have a big enough sample size to show that, like, he's a good, young, talented goalkeeper, but in terms of like he's a victim of our success from last season. Like, I know we didn't win the league, but just, you know, being second, being first for all that time, and now the expectation of having to win the league has made it so that certain players have been replaced probably a season sooner than we probably would have imagined. So that's like Partey, Holding, and Ramsdale. These guys that probably would have still been here had we had finished fourth have been chopped. Like, so it's been harsh, it's been rough, and people will take issue with it, but I think Ramsdale is the kind of keeper that will keep you in the top four. He'll get you into the top four and maybe keep you in it, but he's definitely not somebody that's going to help you win anything. So yeah. Nicholas says, if anyone can't see that Arteta isn't it, needs to get the optometrist very angry what's happening at our club. Leo says, even while with Brentford, an inferior team than Arsenal, the stats have consistently showed that Raya is overall a better goalkeeper than Ramsdale. That does not imply that Ramsdale is bad. No, like, mic drop, Leo. Thank you. Please, like, tell the people, because they're not hearing me. They're not listening. Like, I'm not saying Ramsdale is terrible. I'm not. Like, I think Ramsdale is very good. I just think Raya is better, and it's hard to deny like clear black and white stats, despite like what you are emotionally feeling during the game, because you have Ramsdale in the back of your mind. You're upset that he was chopped like so harshly by Mikel Arteta. So Raya made a mistake. So now you want to say that, oh, well, Raya is not any better than Ramsdale, when the facts are right in front of you. They're right in front of you. And just because Zinchenko got nutmegged by Trent Alexander-Arnold didn't mean that Tierney needed to be playing, because Tierney was not good enough. And I see the same pattern, that we're emotionally invested into players, so we cannot see beyond the it's obvious that Ramsdale is not the guy. Sorry, like, it's just obvious, and like it doesn't mean that he's terrible or anything. So moving forward, because we still have tons. There's 140 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we're getting into the nitty gritty and we're getting into the mess. Okay. So what's going on with our European record, and what does that say about Mikel Arteta? So this is not like Arteta out or anything like that, but his European record is sus as hell. Gunnar Dub says Olympiacos, Villarreal, Sporting Lisbon have all beaten Arteta, Arsenal, and Lens walk through us at times, and some think he can take us all the way. I'm negative because I think he won't. Okay. So the record. I felt that I was watching Villarreal, Sporting, Olympiacos yesterday. We will really struggle against European sides, especially away from home, whether it's Champions League or Europa League. We just we do not look convincing. We don't seem to have a grasp on the fact that the competition is so different than the Premier League that you can't approach it the same way as the Premier League. You need more athleticism, you need more dynamism, you need players that can play, but like, because the game ends up being a lot more of back and forth. Teams in Europe don't care about Arsenal being good. They will come at you because they back themselves. We saw PSV at, at the Emirates played their football. They did not sit back in a deep block like Bournemouth would have. And Lens did the exact same thing. They looked at us, they sussed out what we were about. They knew that they were going to be able to exploit the space behind Zinchenko. They understood that they were going to be able to pick us off in possession, because our biggest weakness is not being clean in possession when we're building from the back and giving away easy chances. So I think for the most part, like, the best way to beat Arsenal is to wait for us to make a mistake and capitalize, because we're going to make at least one in a game, at least one in possession, at least one. So they sussed us out. They weren't sitting in any sort of deep block. They defended perfectly, and it just felt very similar to Sporting. It did. It felt very similar to Olympiacos. Arteta does not have a grasp on Europe. He just doesn't. He doesn't know how to get the most out of the team that he has in these competitions. And we just look like we're trying to do the same thing that we do in the Premier League in Europe, and we have to change. And it doesn't even have to be good teams to beat us. And that's why, like, When people were saying that Arsenal were the fourth like likeliest to win the Champions League, I laughed, and I laughed hard, like a big hearty laugh, like because there is no way that Arsenal, like I watched the highlights of like Manchester United versus Galatasaray. Galatasaray is whooping our behind. They're whooping our behind. They're better than Lens. They're better than Lens. They're whooping our behind. You know, you're not beating Atletico Madrid. You're not beating Napoli. You're not beating any of these teams. You're not, because we cannot just play our simple possession football against these teams. We need other things to we need other tools. And everything that we have is based on us playing this very rigid and controlled style of play that really is only good in the Premier League. We are a very good Premier League side. The way that we play is going to beat 95% of the teams home and away in the Premier League. But away in Europe, you need more than that. And you need individual brilliance, you need speed, you need the ability to be box to box, you need physicality. Like that team, it reminded me a little bit of Monaco in the Emirates Cup, where they just bullied us in the midfield. Without Rice, we would have been completely out of that game. So Arteta needs to figure out a way to be flexible, and that's something that I feel like we've always kind of spoken about, where there's no plan B. Our tactics are very much so like geared to, this is what's going to beat 95% of the teams in the Premier League. And so this is what we're going to do. And most of the time it works, but it's not going to work in Europe. We need to do more. Boy says the team is overcoached. It's Arteta's fault. The players won't even go off script in game when it would help us. And it was weird because even at halftime, when we're 1-1, we didn't look like we were ready to put the other team under any sort of pressure. We were just kind of doing the same things that we were doing before, which was these little 5-yard passes, trying to get it to Zenchenko. Zenchenko's trying to unlock us by doing everything, trying to find Odegaard, not being able to find him. No Saka there, so now there's a black hole on that side, and not being able to create clear-cut chances, not being able to exploit the half spaces, not being able to do anything. And even after Lon scored and we needed an equalizer, we could not figure out a way to attack or speed up the tempo or anything. It was very much so until like the last 5 minutes, where we just kind of kept doing what we always do. And it's worrying, because that's how it's going to be in Europe. It's not going to be just like how we always just control games. The other team is going to come at us, and if we can't figure out a way to change the script, or do something beyond just possessing and passing around in triangles, we're going to really be in trouble. I just found us to really be underwhelming in terms of like players being able to affect the game from an individual standpoint. And yeah, maybe we are overcoached. We need a little bit of individual, like almost like free flowing, like without it being just about playing with the patterns of play. And if we can't operate outside of patterns and play, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Lamine says the biggest problem with Arsenal this season is that all 11 players aren't contributing. Havertz is a passenger, and we can't afford that, especially not in Europe. Aha says Wenger had amazing teams and still had bad European knockouts. Also, let's not forget that Atletico semifinal where we had 10 men for 80 minutes and still got an away goal. That was huge. I hear what you're saying, but like Wenger not being good in Europe doesn't excuse Arteta from not being good in Europe. Remember, Arsene never got the same level of backing that Arteta has. He has never been offered the opportunity to buy two midfielders, one for 70 million and the other for 100. You know what I'm saying? Like, he hasn't had consecutive windows where he's been given 100 million, 115 million, 150 million to spend. So Arsene not being good in Europe does not excuse Arteta from being decent in Europe, especially because Arsene was in Champions League for the majority of the time. Arteta struggled in Europa League, which is a worse competition. So, for me, it doesn't really matter what Emery and Arsene have done. I'm focusing heavily on the manager that we fully backed, that has so many players to his disposal and has had so much time to get this right. And people are still telling me that it's because we don't have good enough players on the bench. Like, it's just the math ain't mathin', y'all. The math ain't mathin'. I think it's a systematic and coaching issue that we don't have any sort of flexibility or the ability to like impose ourselves outside of our patterns. Like, and especially if, unless it's the 90th minute in the Premier League at home, we don't seem to be able to put teams under consistent threat anymore. We have a problem. Norma says this is a general issue with Arsenal. We've always had poor record in Europe. We seem to shrink at away stadiums. Mistake changed the momentum of the game. We were playing it properly. Philip says, I agree with your take yesterday that we need a double pivot in tough games, plus no inverted fullbacks. The team we played versus City is our best for tough games. Yeah, the inverted thing, I feel like not only has it been clocked by everybody, so everybody knows it's going to happen. It doesn't give us the ability to be like very sturdy away from home, and like the defensive part of it, we really just lack. Like when we played against Sporting away from home and we drew 2-2, I was very concerned by the idea that Arteta thought it was okay to play Zinchenko and Jorginho at the same time. I think when you play the two of them at the same time, they want to do the same things. They both want to be on the ball constantly. They like Zinchenko's a little bit different because he can progress the ball by dribbling a little bit, but ultimately they both want to control the tempo, but neither of them offer enough in ball winning duels and athleticism to play in a pivot, because essentially that's what it is, right? Zinchenko removes himself from that left back position and becomes a double pivot next to whoever's playing DM. And we were getting run through. And then when we played them at home, he played the exact same midfield with Zenchenko as well. And so I don't know why we continuously do something that we know is going to be exploited. That also, like, we have an issue. Zenchenko can't be the only way that we progress the ball through the thirds. Like, we're becoming very much so like kind of like we were in 2021, where we needed Partey to pass to Odegaard to pass to Saka to do anything. Zinchenko has to pass to Odegaard to pass to Saka for us to do anything. And that's when we're at our worst. So yeah, I would like to see something different, a double pivot, something that makes us more sturdy, especially away from home, that makes sure that like teams can't score goals, like we need something different. Lamine says, all of us were crying for a different striker option to those we have right now. No physical striker in our entire squad. No one that can bully defenders. Instead, 65 million on Havertz is wild. Let's see. Boy says Arteta needs to develop some flexibility in his tactics, or this thing is not going to work. Ify says we need our football back. The PSV display was what I expected yesterday, but that was missing. You can't do that away from home, though. I feel like the idea that we were going to do the same thing against PSV that we did, we're going to do that away from home at a hostile environment, I think also is like, no, like we were going to have to be a lot more pragmatic in the way that we played. We were going to have to, play our probably more defensive lineup. So, I know we couldn't play Ben White, but maybe, Tommy, Kiwi, Gabriel, and Saliba in a double pivot. That is what we're going to have to do away from home in Europe. We're just not good enough to impose our type of football on these types of teams. We can't do it. So I did not expect PSV against Lens. I actually expect we'd either draw or narrowly win. We ended up losing, but I also expected I was hoping that we would go with something a little bit more defensive. I think the idea that like we're not good enough to do it. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Let's see. Stone says, also Arteta has issue in all tournaments, not just Champions League. Adeboyega says we need players to play in their natural positions. We need to slow down this inverted formation. Everybody seems sick of inversion. The Sheikh says Lens had no superstars or top players, but their manager is so much better than Arteta. Simple. Boy says this season he does not go down the wing at all, and we look out of ideas now. I mean, it's almost like our entire season hinged on Timber, because I think that what we were going to do in the season, a lot of it was dependent on that player being available, and he's not. And, so now we've gone back to the inversion because I actually don't think we were going to invert as much this season because Timber, as much as he can invert, he was not going to do it all the time. And, now we've kind of reverted back to that, but we also don't have Xhaka, and Xhaka was doing a lot of work in there that didn't make Zinchenko have to do everything. So we're missing one full midfielder in there doing the work. We have 2 or 3 like midfielders doing the work of what we need 4 to do. And I also think that that's a problem, that our midfield is not a standalone at 3. We have to have another one coming in. That's the problem. Last season, we had Zinchenko, 3 midfielders, and Jesus all doing the midfielding. Jesus is no longer coming as deep anymore, and you have Havertz instead of Xhaka. So what we needed 5 midfielders to do, we only have 3 doing it now. And we're seeing the effects of that now. And so the system is broken. The system is broken, and we very much so look like the 2021 team to me. Yeah. That's what I feel like, we look like that team. Let's see. Let's see. The guy says, "Why do we keep playing Make a Wish verts?" I don't know. That's not nice. Boy says Zinchenko needs to stop inverting now. It's been figured out in Europe, far as I'm concerned. It's been figured out everywhere. It's just obvious that he's going to do it. And there's only one route that he's going to go to. They know he's not going to pass to Havertz between the lines. They know that. And what Xhaka would do is Zinchenko and Xhaka and Martinelli would create these triangles and overloads on the left-hand side. Zinchenko would give it to Xhaka on like an angle, and then Xhaka would find Martinelli consistently. Remember that one pass that Xhaka had, and everybody was like, that one pass. That pass from Xhaka to Martinelli was money last season. It was money. I don't think Havertz has passed to our winger in space at all. Like, at all. There is no combinations on that side. And so even though we still felt right side dominant last season, the left-hand side was holding its own. Now the left-hand side doesn't do anything. And it's been found out. It's been found out. So obviously, people are talking about the Havertz situation. And again, it's going to rage on as long as he's not playing well. And that is the consequences of buying a player that you didn't need to play a position that he cannot play, and also at the lowest level of confidence that he could potentially have. So like I said yesterday, not only do you need him in therapy to help him emotionally, but you also need to reprogram him to play a position that he's never played before. Even at Leverkusen, he played right center mid, and that was like a 10 position for him. So we're asking him to do something that doesn't come to him naturally. And it does feel like you're watching a forward play in a midfield position. His passes don't have enough zip on them. He doesn't scan. He can't figure out how to keep possession. There were times where he was getting the ball, and you know how Xhaka used to get his body between the man and the ball and fall on it and get a foul, because Xhaka couldn't wiggle away from pressure either. Havertz and Xhaka have that in common, where they're not necessarily going to dribble by you. So if you put a couple of guys on them, they're in trouble. But Xhaka had enough up here to understand that like he needed to keep possession, but Havertz would just turn towards our goal and they would just pick it off of him and they'd be off running. And Zinchenko was nowhere to be found. That's how they scored their second goal. And so I think that, this says Havertz has 0 open play shots on target or big chances created in the league, completed 1 dribble, averages 25 passes a game, yet he's top 10 for fouls conceded. Genuinely, even if you tried this, it's impossible 7 games in. And the fouls, I mean, he has 3 yellow cards already in the season. It's barely October. It's just not working. Like, I do genuinely think that like his best position and the best he's looked for Arsenal is when he's played center forward. And it still hasn't been great, but getting him out of the midfield and just getting somebody that knows how to play midfield in that position will make us infinitely better. I think it'll also take the stress away from the team. I saw Gabriel try to pass it to Havertz yesterday, and Havertz was running away from him when he was supposed to be coming to. And then the opposite happened about 2 minutes later. I don't think that the team understands, like, removing somebody as foundational as Xhaka, you needed to put somebody else foundational in there, and we've put somebody in there and said, "You know what? We don't actually want you to do anything but just run around." That's not gonna work. This team needs somebody else in that midfield to create the foundation for our players to actually succeed, and so removing Havertz from this position is definitely something that needs to happen now. You could try it later on down the line, but his confidence is so low and the team is so dysfunctional that removing him is probably the first step in Arsenal looking decent. The best that we've looked all season was in the Community Shield, I thought, in terms of the balance and, s- not created quite a few clear-cut chances against one of the best teams in Europe. Um Havertz didn't score, but at least we were creating them and the team looked confident and like, they knew what they were doing because you had Declan Rice and Partey in there who I don't even think had no like relationship yet, but at least they both know how to play in midfield so they could figure it out. And so right now, I think the writing is very much so on the wall. I think the writing is very much so on the wall. I think it's very obvious that just remove him from midfield. And if you want to play him up top. It's just at this stage, it's not working. And I think it's affecting everybody. You can't have three midfielders doing a job that we needed five to do last season. Because genuinely, Gabriel Jesus was playing as another number 10. So we recruited poorly. I think I'm okay with saying that at this stage. It could work in the future, maybe. But Arsenal, we have very important players in the team that are performing at a lower level, I think, because the midfield is not functioning. And so I'm more concerned about getting Odegaard back on track. I'm more concerned about Zinchenko not being so heavily relied upon. I'm more concerned about Martinelli and Saka getting the chances that they need more than rehabilitating a player that we shouldn't have bought anyway. So yeah, that's for the good of the team. He needs to be removed from the starting 11, especially in midfield. It's just not working. I think the stats ain't statting, the numbers aren't numbering. And I get that he wins some of his duels, he wins some of his headers, but a lot of that is just mostly based on the fact that he's very tall and he, gets his head on some of those headers and it is what it is. But he was being bullied yesterday. My eye said he was bullied. I saw them consistently win the ball off of him, jump in front of him. He was dangling the leg out there. He's just not a midfielder. And I think Arteta playing players in positions that don't suit them, Partey at right back, maybe Tomiyasu at right back or in the fullback position, Havertz as a midfielder, Vieira at right wing. There's so many examples of it. Jorginho as a lone pivot, Emil Smith Rowe as a false nine, in his Europa League semifinal. I think Arteta has these galaxy brain ideas about what can happen in a game with, in his mind and how a player could play, but it's not working. Play players in positions where they feel comfortable and maybe we'll play better. But I do think against City, you have to go with a double pivot or two. Our best midfielders are Odegaard, Jorginho, Partey, and Rice at this stage. They are better. Those four are better than the other options that we have. So you need to find a combination, like three of those, and put them in a combination together in midfield. Two plus Odegaard, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Because whatever it is, whether it's Jorginho and Partey and Rice and Jorginho, that is going to be better than anything that Havertz can offer. Like it just is, and so I love that, we're trying as a fan base to get behind Havertz, but at some point he needs to, repay the faith too. And it's to me that performance that he put out yesterday was shocking, considering that they gave him the penalty and this was supposed to like spur him into confidence. He looked worse, so it's crazy, it's crazy to me. Leo says Rice, Partey, Odegaard. Um, Nastra says Xhaka was basically very shit in his first four. with us. Maybe Havertz just needs time. I do see Havertz signing as maybe the last Chelsea in our lifetimes, though, hopefully. Maybe he needs time, but I also just think like he needs time in a position that he knows how to play. So he's played as a number 9, and he's also played right-sided center mid as more of a number 10. So either put him in one of those 2 positions or don't play him, because we don't have time for him to learn a position that it took Xhaka like 3 years to learn. Like Xhaka and Partey had a whole season of that combination trying to learn how to play it before they became what they were last season. Xhaka played in that same exact position the season prior when we finished 5th, and it did not hit. It did not hit until a season later. So, and he's a natural midfielder. How long do you think it's going to take Havertz to learn it? So I just think we have to just move on from it at this stage. Knowing Arteta, he'll double down, but going into a game against City with Havertz in your midfield, I don't care if there is no Rodri. We're getting spanked. We have to do something better. Mark says, no, Xhaka was not bad for 4 seasons. He was only one who gave a damn in the team and did not care. He was always the fall guy. The thing about Xhaka, he was played in the wrong position the whole time under Arsene as well. Like his first 6 seasons, he was not in the position that he needed to be in. So again, like the whole idea that Havertz needs time in a position that he doesn't play in, it's just going to end like Xhaka. Xhaka needed to be, he was always like a box to box, like he was further forward. We were trying to play him as a DM and it didn't work because he would get exposed on the other side because he wasn't mobile enough. He always needed somebody like Partey next to him. So I don't think like Xhaka being bad at the position, you also take into the context that he wasn't played in the right position. Havertz needs to be played where he can actually play. But for a team that needed a striker, a midfielder, and to bring in Havertz, that's neither one or the other, that is just a shocking move. It just really is. Philip says non-overlapping fullbacks means our wingers become vital for our width. Without Martinelli and Saka, the whole system fails. Do you agree another winger is more important than a striker now? Potentially. Like in the summer, I did feel a little bit more like I was leaning more towards a winger than a striker anyway, because we just don't have anybody similar to Saka and Martinelli. So yeah, like not having another winger that offers that, like you already said, not having overlapping fullbacks. And we're not going to have overlapping fullbacks. That's the thing. It's like we're not going to go into the January window and buy 2 overlapping fullbacks, one on the left and one on the right. So if we wanted to go into the window and do anything, we need another winger that can stand alone because they're pretty isolated out there. That's the way the system works. So yeah, probably more of a winger would probably be better, but I just wonder what a striker is going to do with the lack of chances as well that we're creating. Like we have to find a solution from what we have right now that allows the team to create clear-cut chances at a consistent rate. Right now, we're not doing that. And so even bringing in somebody like Ivan Toney, he's going to be, if our plan is to have Raya kicking it to Toney, we're not going to score very many goals. So, solve the midfield issue with an internal solution. We have many options. Like I know that people are like, we don't have any options. We have to. No, try Jorginho next to Rice. Try Partey next to Rice. Try those 2 things first and see if we don't instantly improve. Try a double pivot and see if we don't instantly improve. Try Zenchenko in midfield and put somebody else at left back. Like try something else first internally. Try to figure out how we can become a better chance creating side from a midfield perspective, and then figure out whether or not from there if we need a striker or a winger. But I'm mostly concerned about our inability to play in midfield. That scares me more than anything. Mark Neighbor says, correct. We played him CDM constantly as he was the only one who couldn't do it with average ability. A says, in the future, I would like to see a midfield of Rice, Saka, and ESR. That's an interesting midfield. I do think, Saka would make a good left center mid, though. I don't know what people messaging me for some reason. Christopher says, I would still like to get a striker. I think a lot of people would. Diallo says, we all know Kai is not good enough to start for us, but our best midfielder and Partey has got to stay fit. His continued absence is not talked about enough. Unacceptable, really. And that's the thing, is we can talk about Partey to the cows come home and how he's our best midfielder or whatever. But the reason why we went out there and got Rice is because he's just not available enough. And he has major head loss in big games sometimes. So he's back now, and he probably should start against Manchester City, but I do worry about him not having any minutes in his legs. But, you know, you got to go with something different, try something different. You have to. Um, let's see. Mark says, no options. God help us if we supported Everton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Sheffield. No options. Come on now. I actually think we have more options than City. Maybe not at the same level, but we have. But Arteta just needs to try them. But he's so desperate to play the single number 6 with the two number 10s. And I just think it's something that can only work in certain circumstances. And right now, we don't have another number 8 that can offer what Xhaka did and more. We have players that if you put Vieira, ESR, and Havertz all together, you probably get the perfect player. But all of them offer something that the other one can't, but also does not have something else that is very much so required in that position. So we don't have an internal solution with our number 10s that make us feel confident enough to play them. So he has to go with something different. And right now, our DMs are our best midfielders. They're our best options. Like, Rice is probably our best option at number 8 because maybe he doesn't have the creativity, but he's going to be better than anything that any of the other ones can offer in a full game. Do you know what I mean? So he has to try something different. He has to. Our Leela says, Kai will make or break Arteta. There's nothing in between. Aman says, I think the plan is to get Tony, since we are seeing these Jesus left wing shifts and Raya in goal, but we need a direct winger. Yeah, we need quite a bit of stuff, for a team that's bought so much. We still need quite a bit. And I think every single window, you pretty much need to go in there and get somebody in the attack. I think you need to consistently ask different questions of the opposition. Like, I think not buying another forward this summer was dumb. Like, we needed something else. But anyways, let's move on from this as well. And again, this is just I think this is a really good point too, that this whole Havertz thing isn't even his fault. It's not like he tricked us and isn't trying. He's been rubbish from the moment he came into England. I don't get the manager's thinking at all in that deal. But what baffles me the most is the ridiculous pretending from the fan base. And I think the main point in this is that it's not really on Havertz anymore. I'm looking at Arteta to make the right decision. You made a mistake bringing in Havertz, at least at this point, and playing him this much. It's time for Arteta to be the one that we look at. I know that we want to focus in on Havertz Havertz, he's shit. But at this stage, I'm trying to figure out why Arteta's still playing him. And that's the main point now. Arteta needs to stop playing him. He's the one, it's on him. Doubling down on it and being defensive is not cute anymore. Like, we're not losing games, but we're not that far away from losing more, if we can't figure out what's going on with the midfield. This is also a very interesting one as well that popped up from Sash. Sash says Zenchenko is a liability defensively who will cost us in big moments. We saw it at Anfield last season. Teams just constantly target that side to find so much joy doing that. And I think that comes off of the frustration of that goal coming, the winning goal for Lens coming off of that side. And, I think, again, Timber's injury is a big one. It was damaging, and I said it at the time because we needed something different than Zinchenko, because it's so obvious that, like, he's so good, but he is kind of, like, not in the right spot defensively. I don't think he's been poor defensively. I think him removing himself from that position offers the opportunity to be exploited on that side all game. And so the more that he gets on the ball, and the more that we can't keep possession, the more likely it is for them to just pop the ball on that side and for them to score goals. And so, again, I think that this is not so much about Zinchenko. It's about how the manager, susses out problems that have been there for months and doesn't have any answer for them. We know Zinchenko is not, we know he's not great defensively, but we also know that him not being in that spot leaves us susceptible. So what are we doing to stop it? What are we doing to not have that be the issue? Why is Zinchenko so like heavily relied upon for us to even create chances? Or right now, Zinchenko is our whole buildup. If he doesn't get on the ball, we're in trouble. You know, um, Zinchenko is something that should have been solved over the summer, and maybe that's what Timber was for. Um, but it needs to be solved with internal solutions at this stage. And I would, I don't know why. Like, I know we will never see it, but Zinchenko leaves a big spot open on that side consistently. If you need him to be a part of your midfield, take Havertz out and put Zinchenko in midfield and close the back door. So you make sure that you have a fullback there. So if Zinchenko does lose the ball, somebody's there. Tommy's there. Kivior's there. I don't know why it's something that we just never will try. I know there's a reason why, but if you're willing to spend 70 million on a player that doesn't play in that position, then why are you not willing to try a player that you need in your midfield in order for it to function in that position? Because right now it's not working. Zinchenko is an amazing player that I want to see on the pitch for Arsenal. And I think he's so influential and so good that you can't look beyond him. But he can play another position, and he can play in the exact position that you need a player of his caliber to play in. So try it. Like, just try it. Aman says the problem is we're so reliant on Zinni as our inverted fullback. Mark, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Saying great discussion about the squad as a whole, as well as the game last night. Have a glass of red wine on me. Thank you. Pissed. I am bored of seeing Sash now. I mean, he just popped up on my timeline, and I thought some of his points were really, really good. And I like when people say how they truly feel. He has a big platform, so he could just kind of toe the party line all the time. But I feel like when you're in a place of adversity with Arsenal and you're not winning, you start to hear how people truly feel. And I think that he made some decent points. I think some people do feel like Zinchenko's a liability. I don't know if I feel that deeply about that, but what I do feel is that he does get that side gets exploited a lot. And it's something that it's something that we saw last season. So why haven't we figured out a way to stop it? But I hear what you're saying. But I thought he made some good points. That's why I brought it out. Diallo says Jess doesn't have inside knowledge. She's just a simple regular fan like all of us. Exactly. I'm just like you guys. Comic Moth says, I'm a bit frustrated by how stubborn Arteta has been with a lot of his decision in the player section. Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating, but it's because we're seeing things that we've seen before. And that's why, people are like, we only lost one game. And we have. And I said that at the top of the show. So for me, I am not when I stop this show, I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of my day. It's too early in the season for it to be like the end of the world. But a lot of these conversations are happening because I don't think people have truly felt that we have played well at the beginning of the season. Some people feel like we've been riding our luck, and there's some themes that have been there since last season that we're still seeing. Chucking the ball in the back of our net, not being able to, win games away from home in Europe. The midfield not quite clicking, things like that, feeling like we need a striker. It's just, I think these are conversations that we're going to have, and there's nothing wrong with it. Amon says, I don't understand why he hasn't tried Zinni or Odegaard as left center mid yet. I don't either. I know some people are like, oh my gosh, Zinni always plays in the midfield. Why are you guys consistently asking him to get out of left back? He always plays midfield. Because he leaves that spot open. That's why. He leaves that spot open. There is a difference between actually playing in midfield and playing in an inverted position. Because when we're out of possession, which in Europe we'll be out of possession a lot more than we are in the Premier League, there can't be that big gaping hole. It can't be there. Against City, it definitely can't be there. So that's why I'm saying, as much as I figure there's a reason why Zinni plays in that inverted role, I do think that it's worth, if you're willing to try Havertz in left center mid, knowing that he's not a midfielder, then it would not hurt you to try Zinni there and playing like a defensive player back there so that when he does lose the ball, there's somebody there. That's all I'm saying. Would it hurt to play Rice and Zinchenko and Odegaard? Would it? I don't know if it would hurt. I don't know if it would be the worst thing in the world. You know, I'd be willing, I'd be open to it. I'll be open to it, because he leaves that big ass spot over there. Nostra says Zinni leaves so much space, which leaves makes Gabriel go out left back, leaving Saliba alone, or maybe White covering. It is essential to have an anchor man midfielder with the superior passing ability. Yeah, I agree. Boyega says, I am so certain Arsenal players and Arteta will be watching Man City against Leipzig tonight. I mean, yeah, maybe, Man City are what they are. Like, they're going to come in there super confident, and we need to solve our midfield issue. Like, we have so many problems in ourselves that, like, we know what City are going to be like. I don't know. I guess they probably will watch them against Leipzig. I don't know. The Sheikh says, what about Tierney, our best left back, which we sent out on loan? Absolutely madness decision. Tierney is not saving us. I'm just going to be totally real with you guys. I think Timber was supposed to be the answer to like allowing Tierney to go, and then he got the ACL. And so, Tierney could have been in the side, but can you honestly say that you've ever since Zinchenko has been in the team, have you ever watched Tierney play and genuinely thought that he was the better option, even with his superior defensive ability? Again, Zenchenko not being the answer doesn't mean that Tierney was the answer. We should have, I think we tried with Timber. I think Timber's injury is so unfortunate. But Arteta could play Tommy over there, who's probably a better option. But for me, Tierney was never the option. He was somebody that, like Ramsdale, it was clear that they weren't the guy. And so just because you don't like the person that's in the position right now, or that player also has flaws, doesn't mean that Tierney was the answer. I mean, Tierney is not even fit. Tierney went to Real Sociedad and now is out for months. And so again, Tierney not playing the system, being kind of like, he's a good player, but not great. I think the fact that he had no suitors in the summer is very telling. And he's injured. So Tierney, not the answer either. Not the answer. Diallo says, Jess, that's the whole point about Zinni. The trap is the fact that he starts at left back to lure people in. Everyone knows there's a gap there, including Mikel, and Zinni itself is a trap. The point. But I get that that's why we're doing it. And like, yeah, we're trying to lure people in, but I still don't understand why that means that under no circumstances whatsoever can we just play Zinchenko in his natural position and play Tommy at left back, so that is it that Zinchenko's ability loses all of its allure if he cannot just kind of have a free role? I don't believe that. I think it's international football, but we've seen him play for Ukraine and be influential just in the left back role. So I'm not really buying it. Maybe there is a reason, and Pep and Arteta just know better, and they just know that Zinni in club football cannot play in midfield. But when you say it out loud, does it not sound silly? Zinchenko, under no circumstances, he cannot. He's a natural midfielder, but he cannot play in that position, because if he plays in midfield, then the whole allure is gone. Does that sound right? It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. Mark Neighbor, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, keep going, Jess. No matter what you felt about being overlooked and undervalued yesterday, you are well on your way to getting where you want to be. What I'll say about that is that in the industry, I do feel like I'm overlooked. Like, you guys know I'm really open and honest with you guys. This is kind of like a side note, is I don't feel like I'm ever really looked at as like an option for any work or whatever. So it's hard, but where I never feel underlooked or undervalued is here. And that's why I love you guys to death, because like here on this channel, I feel like We have a nice little community here, and you guys always make me feel like I'm like a star or something. And yeah, yeah. Whew. I just got emotional, and so I just need a moment. Um, whew. All right. Aman says it shows how important Gabrielle is. The amount of space he has to cover for him is crazy. Yeah, Gabrielle's very underrated in that way, I think, because he has to do 2 jobs all the time, and I think maybe that's a key issue in, like, Arteta's, philosophy and the way that we play is that there are too many players that have to do 2 jobs. Like, Gabrielle has to do 2 jobs, Rice has to do 3 jobs. Like, that's why our 6 role is so hard to play because you have to do, like, 3 jobs. You know, our center forward has to do 3 jobs, and maybe it would just be nice to get players in their natural position so that they can only have to do 1 job and the work is spread equally around everybody, and it's not like Saka, because I think Saka, Jesus, whoever's playing in our number 6 role and Gabrielle do too much. They have to do too many things at once. And that's too much. Let's see. Chosen One says, if that report is true, that would make me so happy. That would mean he'd be getting much needed rest. I guess meaning about Saka. Let's see. Nikki says, City bought Zenchenko as a midfielder. He was only deployed at left back due to injuries, and that's why when you say it out loud, it doesn't make sense. When you say Zinchenko can only play at left back because if he's not arriving into the space, then he can't play midfield at all. That don't make any sense, y'all. That don't make any sense to me. Zinchenko can play in midfield, I think. But I think Arteta likes to double down on his ideas, and it's more about his ego and being right than it actually being about the player's inability to play there. Like, do we really believe Zinchenko can't play in the position that Havertz is occupying at this stage? Hello? Like, come on. Let's be serious. So yeah, Boy says Zinchenko can't play in Arteta's midfield. Well, Havertz can't play in it either. So what are we saying? I'm sorry. I've seen Arteta try ESR as a false 9. I've seen him try to shoehorn Havertz into this position. I've seen him put Thomas Partey at right back. I would like to see the Zinchenko at left center mid experiment. Because if he's willing to play other players in positions that they absolutely cannot play, why not try Zinchenko? You guys, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And again, for people that are like, he basically plays midfield anyway, the reason why it's different is because if he's in midfield and he loses the ball or we lose possession, there's still going to be a left back there. There's still going to be somebody there. Do you see what I'm saying? So if Zinchenko is doing the role that Havertz is supposed to be doing anyway, then why not just remove Havertz, put Zinchenko in midfield, and have Tommy at left back? Do you see what I'm saying? Because I genuinely don't understand. I understood it more with Xhaka there because Xhaka was doing a lot. So we actually had 4 midfielders and we were creating an overload. Right now, we're not creating an overload because we have one guy that's a ghost. So, nope, I don't believe it. I don't believe you guys. I think he can do it. I think he can do it. So yeah, there you go. Oh, and I just popped this in here just for, the haters out there that were saying my boy was bad yesterday. He wasn't. He was the best player on the pitch. Actually, I thought he was not as good until I rewatched, the game. He actually was very, very good. And people that were lumping him with Havertz, I was like, let's be for real. Like, Rice was out there and he did hit the business. The thing is that he needs, like, what I'll agree with you guys on, especially people that have like constantly want to compare Partey to Rice, is that Rice's main attributes do lie off of the ball. So that is where we get the advantage of having Rice, is that when we're out of possession, he stops the attacks a lot more. He anticipates, he intercepts, he wins his duels and things like that. Where Partey just probably edges it is his flair and maybe his passing catalog. Like, I think Partey has more passes in his locker, like especially the passes in between the lines. And so if you're going to remove that from the team, you need to add it in somewhere else. And so I would imagine that Rice would actually benefit from a player that can actually play balls between the lines next to him. So whether that's Partey or Jorginho or Zinchenko, who those three are probably our best passers in the side. Those are our three players that could probably are the best players that in between the lines that can find a pass. Rice needs to be playing next to that player constantly, I think. And I know Zinchenko kind of plays in midfield, but I think you have to have another player in there that can do some of the progressing, has a little bit more, maybe different types of passes that they can offer, because Rice does, I think, need a little bit of development in that department. Now, do I think that he never passes forward and he always passes sideways and backwards and he does not pass between the lines? I think that is a total overreaction. But no, he is not quite where Partey is in that respect. He's not quite where Jorginho is in that respect. So either one of them needs to be next to him or Zinchenko needs to be next to him. There needs to be somebody there that can find Jesus in between the lines, can find Martinelli in between the lines, because that's what we're really missing. The access to central spaces is not quite there. And so, yeah, Rice was good yesterday, but there still needs to be some modification in midfield in order to get the most out of all three players in that position, and the balance is off. So, yeah, Rice was good for all the haters. Ham says, Animishes, what game were you watching? The amount of times he turned and drove forward with it. I don't know who Animeshes is. Ivy says Declan Rice was left alone by himself. He was really upset yesterday. I think the ball progression will improve in time. He should have been upset because I saw several players, especially like Gabriel, Rice in particular, and even Saka early on, that were extremely frustrated with certain players that weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so Rice showed up and did his job, but everybody else kind of ghosted. So yeah. Oh, Animashes. I was like, "Who is Animashes?" I was like, "Who's that?" But yeah, now I see who it is. But yeah, I think he played well. I think he played well yesterday. Social Join says Rice can't keep covering all that ground. All our DMs will be injury prone playing 6 here. Garrow says people were going in on Rice because he didn't close the guy down quickly enough for the first goal. Shaking my head, his back is hurting from carrying. Hyphy says Declan Rice was left alone by himself. Yeah, you said that already, or I read that already. Aman says Partey helps us accelerate the game and helps us progress the ball to our attackers in central areas. Need to see Rice and Partey pivot. That has been the best that we played in midfield. Aha says Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Tamiyasu, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, Trossard, Havertz, Jesus, 11 for Sunday. What I'll say is that I like the back five. I like the midfield. Up front, we might have to play that, which is fine. I have a feeling we're going to see Eddie. But that's the midfield that we should go for. That's the back five that we should go for. You can't play Zenchenko against Manchester City. They're just way too intelligent. They know exactly how to exploit that, and they will punish us. Like, you think Lance was clinical? They are going to, they're going to exploit that badly. So yeah. Diallo says Rice had a Rodri-esque performance. He's not Partey, but you can't really compare the two different styles. And I think that's why, I do think it's very obvious why Arteta has brought Rice in. It's for the ability to do, Partey is never going to be a Rodri. He's not good enough off the ball. He doesn't really stop things before they happen. So Partey is very much so an on the ball type of player. And so you need somebody a little bit more off the ball, somebody also that's a little bit more safe, as well. And so Declan Rice doesn't really get the juices flowing the way that Partey does, because when Partey is on, some of the passes, some of the moves, some of the drop of the shoulders, it is so fun to watch. Maybe Rice needs somebody like that next to him. And so play Partey, play Jorginho, play Zinchenko, somebody else in that role, in order to take some of the burden off of Rice, because he can't just do it all of it himself. But, I'm open to the idea that our best midfield probably does have both of them in it. And that's fine, but Arteta needs to get to that position by himself. He needs to get to the point where he falls on the sword, and it's just kind of like, okay, this is not working. So yeah, the Sheikh says, I just play Arteta does not play Partey at right back. If he does that, I'm finished. Like, I'm doing the watch along, you guys. It will be ended very quickly if Partey is at right back. Just do the right thing and put him in midfield. Fred says if Partey, and like the thing is, like, I'll just say this. The reason why I think we see Zenchenko and Partey at right back is to accommodate this idea of an attacking midfielder that just has a free role and just arrives in the box. That was cute with Xhaka because Xhaka was also doing the midfielding. But as long as that player is Havertz and he's doing 10% of what Xhaka was doing, it won't work. That player still has to contribute. That player still has to contribute. So there is no Partey or Zinchenko at, being a midfielder. It's just play a midfielder that knows how to do the midfielding, and it'll make things a lot easier, I believe. So yeah. Anna Masha says, any news on Saka's injury? Nothing concrete yet. Arteta said after the game that it doesn't look good, but somebody at Sky Sports said it's precautionary. So I am not sure about Saka. Like, my feeling is that he'll play, but I'm not sure that he should, because he came off 3 times in a row with an injury. Like, that just feels like we're forcing it at this stage, and we need to have another answer. That's just period. We need another answer. The Comic Moth says Partey starts at right back. Hi, just bye. Yeah, exactly. Like, you won't see me because there's just no reason for it. Just play him in midfield, man. Aman says, don't worry, it's only Zenny because Zenny was injured. We want to see him there. We won't see him there. So yeah, let's see. Sola says, would like Partey, Rice, and Odegaard midfielder against City. And this is what I'll say as well. As somebody that really loves Odegaard, and I'll go to bat for him, he has to step up in this game. He has been poor in our 2 hardest games. So against Spurs and Lens, he hasn't been great. So I'm not somebody that protects the player and just will like never say when they're bad. Against City, without Rodri, I should expect to see a pretty influential game from Martin Odegaard. I'm not sure what's going on with him right now, but I do sense that I'm watching a player that's just not quite at the level that we expect him to be. And that sucks, because without him being at his tip top, you lose a lot. And I don't know if it's hangover from last season or what, but we need our captain at his best, especially if there's no Saka. So he has to show up. The knives will be out for him if he has another game like he did against Spurs. And I won't be able to save you, Odie, so you need to do it. But yeah, Odegaard has to have a really good game at the weekend. Arteta needs to make a big decision. It's not even a big decision. It's an easy decision. Drop Havertz or play him up top. Play Partey and Rice in midfield. Drop Zinchenko. Sorry, but no. They're going to eat that up. Put Tommy on the pitch. I know he wasn't great, at right back, but we know he's much better at left back, and his job will just be to stop them, to defend, So if you ask Tommy to do less inverting and to just do what he's really good at, which is defending, he'll be fine. And then hope we score a goal, hope we score a goal. So yeah, Nostradamus says, Trossard needs to step it up for this upcoming game. He was stinky yesterday. It hurt me bad. I think Trossard is an amazing player, and like, I'm surprised that his technical level was at what it was yesterday. I won't even blame being on the left-hand side. Like, when he got the ball, he was genuinely atrocious. And so if I do think he should start against City if Saka is not available, because I do think we need our most clinical and just most mature attackers up there. And so you have Jesus, you have Trossard, and you just do a toss-up between Havertz and Eddie to play through the center. So he has to have a good game, or we won't see him for years. So yeah, Trossard was terrible, but I've seen other players have horrendous games and still play the next day. So I still think he deserves to play another game and see what he's like. So yeah, you guys, this has been so much fun. Like, obviously it's not great to lose a game, but it's not the end of the world just yet. We have Manchester City at the weekend, so we're gearing up for that. Femi is going to be back on the show for the post match, as well as potentially a rewatch. So look out for that on the Patreon side. But again, you guys will get a watch along and live player ratings. And I will be back for a preview tomorrow for the game. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't let this take you down. It's the Arsenal. It's a roller coaster. You guys know it's never smooth. And it's only like 11 games in. So like there's no, it's not the end of the world yet. But I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow with a little bit of a preview there. Let's see if I can get maybe I can get somebody on for tomorrow as well for the preview, but I'll try to do that for you guys. But truly enjoyed this. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out, and I will see you guys again tomorrow. Bye y'all.